Hello, welcome back. We're going to do another video today, and it's going to be a 6-month review today, and we're going to be doing it on the Dyson Light Ball. Now, this machine here, I bought pretty much 6 months to the day on the what we're on now, the 7th of October, November, December, January. I think it's about 7th of October I bought this machine, so it's about due for its 6th month review. So what we're going to have to do is have a sort of a recap on this machine. It's the Dyson Light Ball, as I say. This was the replacement for the DC40 ERP, and I think it was launched on the 1st of September. It was around about that sort of time last year when the new 2017 EU rules and regulations were tightened up, saying that all vacuum cleaners then must have to be below 900 watts or 900 watts and under, and 80 decibels or lower. They're not allowed to be louder than 80 decibels. So this, I think, was the first machine that Dyson launched that met with those rules, because this is actually an 80 decibel machine, and it's a 700 watt as well, so it's well within the EU regulations for energy use and for noise. And indeed, on previous reviews I've said just how quiet this machine was when you're pushing it round. The motor actually isn't too bad, and the Brushroll motor is very quiet as well. It's actually quite an effective cleaner, and since the 2-month review that I did of it, I think I did a 2-month review, I know I've done another one before, and I highlighted a few little issues on that review, but aside from those, there hasn't really been anything else that's cropped up since. So all in all, it's actually been a reasonably good machine for the money. I mean, it's £200 still in Argos. I believe you can get the pet version as well. It's the animal, which is like the purple cyclone instead of the yellow. And the only difference is that the animal version comes with the tangle-free turbine tool, which is this here. So basically, you're buying the same machine as the Multifloor, except it would come with that. Now that came with another machine I bought, so it's compatible with that machine anyway. And it's quite good when you use the hose with this on the end. So if you were to get the animal version, you would get one of those, and that's excellent for getting pet hair off your furniture with. As I say, I'll have a little demo with it a bit later on, and I will connect this up to it, and we'll use it on the chair there, where there's a few cat hairs on now, because the cat tends to go up on the furniture quite a lot, as they do. So let's get the camera off, and we'll have a recap of what we get with the Light Ball. Because it's turned out to be quite a popular machine, looking at the reviews on Argos. I mean, there have been a few negative reviews on it. There are on just about everything really, but a lot of people have found it quite a good machine. Okay. So here it is then, the Dyson Light Ball. It weighs about just under 7 kilos, this does, so it's not particularly light, as you would say. I mean, there are lighter cleaners around than this, but it's actually a pleasant machine to use, to push along. It has on the front here, basically, this is what differentiates it between the Light Ball and the DC40, is that it has this completely different style of floor head to what the DC40 had. Now this doesn't have such aggressive agitation on as what the old model did, and I think one of the reasons why they did that was to cut down on the noise that it made, because obviously when you've got an aggressive brush roll here, when it's beating on the carpet, that makes a lot of noise. So to get under that 80 decibels, I think they possibly had to put a different brush roll on to make it quieter. The motor itself has got some extra additional noise insulation on the filter on the side, which I'll go into in a little bit. The bin itself is pretty much the same as the DC40. I think the only difference is that you've got a yellow insert inside here, where it was grey on the DC40 ERP. On the side we have the multi-tool here, which is basically your crevice tool and dusting brush incorporated into one, and on top of that sits the upholstery tool, So when you buy the Light Ball Multifloor, those are the two tools that you get with it. And you get a little holder that goes on the bottom of here. You obviously have to clip that onto the side of the spine, and then your tool fits onto the side. This is where one of the gripes was that I had on the original review, that basically this here, I would have thought it would have been better if that would have been stored on the bottom like it was on the old machine. And indeed, there's a new model just being launched. Dyson now got it on their website, and I believe it's on AO as well. Is that the Dyson Ball Animal 2? Basically, that's the replacement, I think, for the DC41. And that is like a bigger version of this with this floor head on and a few more fancy colours. And what they did on the Ball Animal 2 was they put this tool here rather than on top of the crevice there. They gave it a dedicated holder inside the bottom of here, which I thought was better. So I think they've listened to people's complaints that we didn't really like the location of that on the top of there, because it tends to get knocked off when you're using the cleaner. When you unwind the cord, for instance, it goes flying. So when I use this machine now, what I tend to do is just remove that straight away, and I'll put it down on the side, out of my way, so it's not going to get knocked off. It's not the most, I think somebody just obviously, well, I don't know what the reason why they thought it would be good on there, but it isn't. And other reviewers have said that as well. What was the other point that I mentioned on the first review of there? I found a little bit of creaking. Basically, when you rock the machine or move it around, I did find that the plastic was creaking underneath here. And what I had to do was I took the cover off here, and just inside here I put little bit of grease inside here, so that when you pull it back, this part here would slide inside the ball a lot more quietly. So basically, there's some grease on the side of here and some on the side of there. It stops it from creaking. I put a little bit of grease on this joint here as well to stop that from creaking. It's what happens basically when you've got plastic against plastic. I mean, Dysons are all plastic, as you know. So you've got the stock label there on the back. That basically says that it's 700 watts. When this camera decides it's going to focus on there, which it will, there we go. So you can see it's a 700 watt machine there, and it gives you the net weight there. I think it's 6.9 kilograms. So I mean, it's not a heavy machine, but it's not the light. I've had 5 kilo machines before. The Vax Mac Air I had was about 5 kilos. So there we go. That's how heavy it is. Inside the bin, there is a little bit of dirt inside here because, as I say, it has been used on quite a regular basis, and it does pick up the cat hairs very well. What I do find is that I do tend to have to brush off this shroud fairly often, because you get a bit of a build-up of dust and contaminate particles and that it forms on there. So you have to, when you empty it, brush that shroud off on a regular basis to make sure that the shroud is kept clear, and so that it can have really good airflow. You've got, as I say, your max line there. It's a good idea never to exceed the max line in normal daily use. Keep emptying it when you should, and you shouldn't really have a problem with it. Okay, inside here, I mean, I've washed this filter only once since I've had the machine. You can see that there is some dust inside there. I just haven't really felt the need to have to keep washing it all the time. You can see a little bit of dust build up, but it doesn't really, I find, make a lot of dirt inside here. You can see there's a little bit of dirt in it now, but it doesn't have a terrible problem. You know, like some shark cleaners, they make their filters filthy within the first week or so. But with this, you can see the slight bit of dirt that comes out the cyclones, but it's very, very fine dust. So it's not really a machine that is going to clog its filters as long as you keep that shroud clean. And I must stress that again. Very important, that. Emptying the machine is pretty simple. As I say, you just press that lever there and the bottom pops open and out it all comes. There. And we can see the bottom seal here. Give that a brush down when you clean it out, making sure you've got nothing on there that's going to affect how that seal seals against the bottom of here, otherwise you'll have problems. So when you empty it over the bin, you need to give it a good bang out, so making sure that where you've got that black tube going up the middle, that's the suction tube where the suction comes into the motor there. Around the outside of that black area, inside the yellow area, that is where the cyclones discharge into. So when you're banging it out, you need to have a look up there and make sure there's no clogs or anything and no big buildups of dirt. So that has to be kept clear when you empty it, so make sure that's all banged out. So that's the bin, as I say, and that fastens up. The other area where it's possible that you'd need to clean out, well, you'd need to check on a fairly regular basis, is inside the brush roll here. Now if I lie the machine back, what we're going to have to do is to just take off the, I've got to remember now how we do this. On the back there's a little button here, so we're going to get the brush roll out, what you need to do is to press that little grey button when it's pressed in, and then you rotate this round here, and as you're rotating it round, then you pull out your brush roll like so. And then what I would do, I would then pull off the end of here, like so. Okay, now what that will do is to, let me just see here, we're just going to making sure that that area inside there is kept clear of build-up. You can see the dust starting to build up inside there. Also keep a check as well on the inside of here. Where that line of dirt is there, you can get a build-up forming on there, and what will happen is, I think it needs to be upside down, this does, and we can have a closer look at it. So what we need to be checking is this area here. So you get a build-up of dirt inside the brush roll, and it can build up on, let's just focus the camera, you can see the way that the hairs are starting to build up inside here, this detritus. So basically this, or debris, if you lived in a house where there's a lot of ladies with long hair, and that would start to get underneath the brush roll and into this area here, so you'd need to, on a regular basis, get the brush roll out and make sure that this area here, where this bearing is kept clean, because if this bearing starts to get jammed up, the motor is going to try and force the brush roll round. That won't be able to turn round properly. It'll start to bite into here. So although this is fairly clean, it's because I checked it on quite a regular basis. And basically all I had to do was you pull your end cap off of here, and then you can see your bearing will come out as well. And you need to be making sure that you've got no, as I say, build up inside here. So we'll put this bearing back on. Okay, and that just pushes back in nicely. And then what we can do is we can just push our brush roll back in to the housing. This is your drive spindle, by the way. This is where it actually drives the brush roll at the end of the motor. The motor for the brush roll is just inside here. So I'm just going to put the brush roll back in now. And then when it's pushed in all the way, like so, we can click that back in. So that's done. Okay, so that's just one area that it's worth checking on a regular basis, especially if there's people with long hair and pets in the house as well with long coats. You need to be checking inside that brush roll and on that bottom bearing, because as I say, dirt can get underneath through that gap, and we don't really want that, do we? Otherwise it'll stop working properly. So that was that's that area. Let's have a look at the filter inside here. Well, we've got it over on its side. So to get to the filter, we would just turn this off here. You turn it for quite a while. It's quite a long thread on there. There we go, so that's come off now. and then it's basically our exhaust filter inside here, and that just twists off anti-clockwise, and there you can see the other side. This is sort of some sound muffling material here, so we can take that out and wash that. Dyson reckons that you should wash this every month. I don't think really that it's necessary, because it doesn't really get that dirty. The only thing that should be on here, as I say, is like black carbon dust from the motor. That's the only thing really that should be in that filter. If there's other stuff in there, you've got a problem. So there we go. And that's after 6 months. I mean, okay, granted, I don't use this machine all the time. It's one of these machines that I do use occasionally, but I used it a lot to start with. And there we can see inside, it gives you the instructions there of how to wash the filters. So we'll put it back on again. What we have, there's like a little arrow there, and that's the arrow that you have to line up to the top. So you've got an arrow there and an arrow there, and those two have to be lined up like so, and then your filter's back on properly. And then we can put the side of the ball back on. One other area that I did have to put a little bit of grease on was this little tiny bearing here. That's the bearing that the ball rides on at the bottom. I just put a little drop of oil on there, and the same on that one on the other side. It helps it to roll nice and smoothly. So we'll put the ball back on. So we talked about the filters, the pre-motor filter, and we talked about the exhaust filter as well. And we talked about the little multi-tool. I said there that I didn't think that was a particularly good design. We've talked about the cleaner head here, and it's important that you occasionally do remove that brush roll, check under the bearing at the end, and also this big bearing on this end to make sure no dirt's got into it, because if it does, you're going to have problems. Right. The other issue that I don't particularly think that's very wonderful is the spine again. I do find there is a certain amount of flexing on this spine as you're controlling the machine and going from side to side. You do tend to find that your handle does tend to flex. Now, I don't think it's as bad as what the earlier models were, the DC40 and 41. But what Dyson did on the next model that's just come out, the Ball Animal 2, is to make the wand inside here out of metal instead of plastic, which I thought was a good idea. But otherwise, you know, it's not going to be a horrendous problem. I just think it's a little bit flexible, but that just seems to be the way that Dysons are. So let's put this back on. Let's talk about the cable now. The cable on this is a lot longer than what it was on the DC40. This is around about 9.5 metres, so you're plugging it in the centre of the room and you can go a good 10 metres either side, so I think the reach on this machine is very good, especially for a £200 Dyson. Plug that in there. So what we'll do, we'll turn it on and we'll have a look at the energy meter to see how much electricity it uses. The other thing is that I was a little bit peed about is the fact that there is no cable clip on the top of the handle here. I know it comes out halfway down, but I always like to have a cable clip at the top. It's only very minor little niggle there, but I would have liked to have seen a little cable clip here just to hold the cable up. What else? I don't think there is anything else with it really, to be honest. I mean, it's not a bad machine at all for the money. We'll take the wand out here. So again, you've got a plastic wand and you've got a fairly long hose with it. It comes out at the bottom of the machine and we can stretch it all the way. It will go just about to the stair below the top. It won't go all the way to the top. It's just a slight bit short to reach. And again, it is a plastic wand you get with this, and it's quite a narrow bore as well. So I'd imagine it's probably going to be quite easy to get large debris caught in there. So you need to be careful what you're picking up so that it doesn't get jammed. So that's the hose. Not a bad hose, as I say. I'll put that back in there. Let's turn it on and have a look at the energy. And what you do find is it's rather noisy when you turn it on because it draws the air through the top of here. So we're using 690 watts there with the suction motor going. Now if I turn the Brushroll motor on now, it's around about 750, 760 watts with the Brushroll and the motor going. So we'll give it a little push round. I've just got to clear the cable out of the way. Now what I would normally do, I normally have it set at the middle setting on the Brushroll head, and I find that's the easiest to push it round on, and carpet and on hard floors as well. I can go into my bathroom on the hard floor on the lino with it on that setting. So that's the middle setting on the triangle. You see, without a cable clip, the cable is only halfway, and it's easy to run over the cable with it if you're not careful. And the cable's caught, so I'm going to have to go and release that now. What you know is it's very, very quiet. It's a really relaxing machine to use. It's easy to push on the carpet here, and it's just not a noisy machine at all. So straight from the carpet onto the short pile mats in the kitchen, and also onto the lino as well. And the cable's caught again, I'm afraid. I'm going to have to go back and release the cable again. This is the problem with cabled machines, the cable just gets trapped all the time. That's why we have those. Okay, let's carry on. So to go onto hard floor, you just turn off the Brushroll, like so. And then we go straight onto hard floor without doing anything else to the setting on the floor head. Unfortunately now I've run out of cable. I'll have to, no, I'll just leave that for now, there's not enough cable. It's only a 9.6, so it doesn't quite stretch down to the bottom of the bathroom from the central plug in the middle of the room. What I should have done was, instead of plugging it in there, had it plugged in down there. So now we're going to go back onto carpet again, start the Brushroll off again. And it's so beautifully quiet to use. It's just, you wouldn't be able to believe that it was a Dyson, to be honest with you, when you think how noisy they used to be in the past. So we can use the steering on it now to twist it round and get it right up into that corner. Okay, one of the things I do find is I tend to knock onto that quite a lot, so I would just tend normally to turn that round into that position when I'm using it, so I don't knock it on the side of my trousers. Right, what I'm going to do now is just put the tangle-free turbo brush on there and see how effective that is on the sofa there. So take the hose out. We need to use a little button there. Like that. Very difficult to do with only one hand. So now we're going to stick this on. So yeah, that is very, very noisy. That really does increase the volume level when you use this. It's the same really with any kind of turbo brush, whether it's conventional or whether it's the tangle free. So I mean, it does do a pretty good job of getting the pet hairs off. So if you did get the animal version of this, that is basically the only difference, is that the animal would come with this, whereas the multifloor doesn't. So I can only apologise about the disruption through that little demonstration there, because the cable doesn't normally get trapped underneath the corner of that chair. But that just highlights one of the drawbacks with corded machines, is that they do have cables. I'm going to be doing a 3-month review very shortly, in the next week or so, on the Dyson V8 there that I've had for 3 months now, and see how that one's gone. But as I say, if you did want the budget Dyson machine, and these are only £200 as I say at the moment, and they have been pretty much all the time it's been for sale, the light ball. And I think that for £200 you couldn't really do much better than one of these. They're not bad at all. There's a few little niggles, as I say. You need to just from time to time take that brush out of the brush roll head and make sure the bearings underneath aren't having a big build-up of hair and dirt. And also make sure that you keep the shroud as clean as you can. Use the dusting brush on the side or any other brush when you empty the bin, just to remove this and then brush that down. Okay? And otherwise, after 6 months use, I mean, this machine is pretty good. And I'd give it, for the £200 that it cost, with the little niggles that I've got, I would give this machine a 9 out of 10. I'd give it 90%. I think it's a pretty good Dyson for the money. As I say, I've had other ones since then, but this one, I would recommend it. If you're after a budget Dyson, they're not bad at all. Got a nice short pile carpet, use on hard floors. As I say, it's a great So until the next review, I'll say bye for now.